What's really unique is that South Korea has become the first country globally to enact and enforce a comprehensive law on AI. Now, it's interesting that South Korea actually passed this law in January last year, but everyone was given a one-year transition period to get ready for the laws and for organisations to start complying. And that's referring to the things you've mentioned, like setting up risk management frameworks and having auditing processes in place. It's interesting that although South Korea passed its laws after the European Union, it's begun enforcing them before the European Union has been able to. So the EU AI Act isn't expected to be completely enforced until December of 2027. I think it's also interesting that South Korea is absolutely trying to thread that needle between innovation and regulation. As you mentioned, it is definitely trying to be an AI superpower. It is spending about 10 trillion Korean won on AI in this year alone. So to put that in perspective, that's about 10 billion Australian dollars. It's investing heavily, but at the same time trying to put the right safety guardrails around these technologies. If you read the legislation itself, more than 50% of the content is actually about supporting domestic Korean AI development. And that's through things like new funds for startups, it's training data for training AI models, and it's financial incentives for small and medium enterprises to adopt AI. This is really quite groundbreaking in terms of what it's trying to achieve. But the South Koreans would themselves admit that this law is not perfect, but they see it as a necessary foundational starting point for regulating these technologies.
Can you talk me through this sort of tiered system when it comes to different kinds of AI being regulated in different ways? What do they mean by high impact AI, for example?
Sure. So South Korea has taken a lot of its cues from the legislation that's been passed by the EU. They create a risk tiering. So high impact AI systems is really what this law narrowly focuses on. And high impact refers to things that fundamentally affect a person's rights, life or safety. There is very similar language in the EU AI Act. Then the Korea laws break this down into more specific applications of AI. So they talk about the uses of AI systems in the management of nuclear material or in energy supply and security. And they also mention that it's going to be in use cases around employments and loans. So really some of the fundamental things that affect citizens' lives.
Artificial intelligence technology is developing so quickly. Is it realistic for legislation across the world to be able to actually keep up with the way that this technology is developing?
That's a fantastic question. And we already know that the scale and capabilities of these technologies are developing at a breakneck pace, as well as the adoption of these technologies in certain economies and countries. However, what I do notice is a rising tide of countries saying that if we don't trust these technologies, we're not going to maximise the benefits from them. So you'll see many countries around the world now either looking at enacting or debating new AI laws. And that includes countries like Japan, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brazil, Mexico, Turkey, amongst many others. So there is a rising tide of concern around the harms and risks of AI and a recognition that if you don't appropriately mitigate those risks, you're not going to deliver the productivity benefits or the gains of AI technologies.
So how does Australia's legislation compare to what we're seeing in the EU and in places like South Korea? You know, we've seen just this year, Australia is sort of trying to regulate tech companies with the social media ban. Are we doing sort of similar things in the AI space here?
Not really. Australia late last year released its national AI plan, and in that plan it basically ruled out any new immediate comprehensive AI laws. What it did say is that AI risks and harms will be largely managed through existing regulations and laws. Now, whether you think this is adequate or not, it is certainly speaking to the government's efforts to try to have appropriate levels of regulation that don't strangle innovation. The government has pretty much said that we will regulate AI as little as possible, but as much as necessary. This is quite different to the approach Australia has taken on things like the social media ban, where Australia has been far more proactive. I think that speaks to a difference of what the government sees as to be the gains of AI. You saw late last year through the Treasurer's productivity roundtables that AI is really being touted as a solution, a fix for Australia's productivity woes. So there is a real concern that if we over-regulate these technologies before they've had the chance to flourish, we won't maximise those productivity gains.
Olivia Shen, thank you so much for your time and analysis this morning. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.